Now we have breaking news on two stories. One, President Trump has paused military aid to Ukraine. And two, the head of the New York FBI field office is now retiring. We're going to get to both of these stories in this video, but let's hear the details on the military aid being paused.
With this breaking news, there are still a lot of questions about this, but breaking word that just now, literally moments ago, the United States has ordered the cutoff of all aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, and this seems that continued fallout from that showdown, really, in the Oval Office between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Friday. It seemed as though Zelenskyy was trying to say over the weekend that he wanted to come back and sign that minerals deal that didn't get signed and get back in the good graces. But as we heard from President Trump earlier today, he needed to hear more appreciation from Zelenskyy. And we were hearing talks today at the White House, even from his national security advisor earlier, that there were going to be discussions about specifically the aid, whether or not that the weapon shipments would continue to Ukraine. We also know there were reports of Trump meeting with his secretaries from Rubio to Hegseth to his DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, as well as Vice President Vance, all meeting in there about the future for Ukraine.
Now, quite frankly, I'm not surprised by this. I would think with the mindset that President Trump has, including his entire administration, which is America first, this was probably already on the table as a tool to apply pressure to Zelenskyy. I think it's just now they're actually making it official. Now, earlier, President Trump was asked if he was going to do this, and here was his answer.
Please go ahead.
Are you undecided if you're going to suspend military aid to Ukraine? Have you made that decision?
Well, I haven't even talked about that right now. I mean, right now, we'll see what happens. A lot of things are happening right now as we speak. I mean, literally as we speak. I could give you an answer and go back to my office, the beautiful Oval Office. I could go back into the Oval Office and find out that the answer is obsolete. It's like his business. It's obsolete. You come up with a new chip and it's obsolete about 2 minutes later, right? But that's what's good about his business. That's why he's the only one that's successful in it.
So as you could see there, he was telling the truth. I mean, anything could change. He can give you an answer then, and then later on, like we just found out, that the aid would be paused. Now, let's just understand something really quick. This is not a permanent thing. This is a negotiation tactic from Trump to get Zelenskyy to fall in line. That's really what this is about. Now, of course, the media had to push the whole Russia narrative, and they asked them about that.
Follow up my colleague's question from Russia saying that your foreign policy is largely in line with their vision. Should that be concerning to Americans?
Said what?
Should that be concerning to Americans?
Read the statement.
That Russia says that your administration's foreign policy is, quote, largely in line with their vision.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it takes two to tango, and you're going to have to make a deal with Russia, and you're going to have to make a deal with Ukraine. You're going to have the assent, and you're going to have the consent from the European nations, because I think that's important, and from us. I think everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It can be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else. We talk about suffering. They've suffered.
The one thing I give President Trump credit for is how he makes complex issues really simple and just straight to the point, right? I mean, how are you expected to negotiate an end to a war if you can't speak to the both of the parties, right? I mean, it's just common sense, but the media just seems to, I guess, miss the boat on that. And this isn't the first time in history this has occurred with Democrats in the media going after Trump after he did something that is historic, like the Abraham Accords or assassinating Soleimani, where they said, oh, no, that's going to cause World War III. And what happened? So that is to be expected. Now, I want to play you a clip from Bill O'Reilly, who clearly articulates what is wrong with Zelenskyy to begin with.
He knows that Zelenskyy is in way over his head. Trump knows he's in way over his head. And that's a problem because Zelenskyy is demanding parity in a situation where he just doesn't understand. And you know, I feel sorry for Zelenskyy because his motivations are to do what's best he can for his country. That's what motivates Zelenskyy. Everybody else. But I believe that Zelenskyy wants the best for his country. He's just out of his league.
Yep.
He doesn't understand the danger that surrounds him. And he's not cooperating with the one country that can save his butt.
Yeah, well, Europe can't save his butt. So I agree with you. Yeah.
No, Europe can't save him. He can go around and meet with Prince Charles, and they can have tea, and they can do all that all day long. It's not going to matter. But again, I'm going to go back to optimism. I believe that Trump will get a deal. Once he gets the deal, the Democrats will say it's a terrible deal. It's this, it's that. You know what they're going to do.
But then we can evaluate it. Right. Then we can evaluate.
And that's just got to be frustrating when it comes to President Trump dealing with someone like Zelenskyy, because it's like he doesn't read the room. He doesn't get what's at stake here. He's caught up emotionally, right? And it's to be expected. He's been through a lot. But also, he's benefited from working with America. We bankrolled this entire war, in my opinion. So, listen, at the end of the day, I hope he signs the agreement and we can actually make progress. I know Democrats will cry. It doesn't matter what happens. They will rage against President Trump. And every time they do, they lose credibility, of course. Now, let's go to what JD Vance had to say, the vice president, because he sat down with Hannity tonight. And he also chimed in on what happened.
And I do think that there was just a certain sense of, there was a lack of respect, there was a certain sense of entitlement, and most importantly, look, we can look past all of that stuff, but the president has set a very clear goal for his administration. He wants the killing to stop. And I think that it's very important that President Zelenskyy and of course President Putin too, they've both got to come to the negotiating table, and that's ultimately where things broke apart. I really don't care what President Zelenskyy says about me or anybody else, but he showed a clear unwillingness to engage in the peace process that President Trump has said is the policy of the American people and of their president. That's the real breakdown. Is I think Zelenskyy wasn't yet there, and I think frankly now still isn't there, but I think he'll get there eventually. He has to.
Now, in regards to pausing the military aid, Scott Jennings makes a great point. The reality is there is no solution for Ukraine in regards to winning this war. They're going to lose this war 100 times over. So why not just take a deal?
Here's what I see. They've lost 700,000 people dead or wounded. They've spent untold amounts of money. They've gained barely any territory in 3 years. The Ukrainians have fought them bravely and courageously. At the same time,
why can't Donald Trump say that?
At the same time, the political will in the United States to open-ended fund a stalemate is dropping rapidly. The American people want this to come to a conclusion. I think Zelenskyy is misreading the American political situation. Maybe it was true 3 years ago. Today, people want this to come to an end, and there's a way this ends where he wins.
But don't you
and
think
he cannot
Zelenskyy
accept the
above
win.
anybody else wants this to end?
He has absolutely no aim.
Now, again, the most frustrating thing here, the Democrats don't see it that way. They see it from a victim lens. Zelenskyy, his country was invaded. Fact. Putin is a dictator. Fact. We need to support him. Fact. But we're not going to pay attention to the money that we keep throwing down the drain. We're not going to pay attention to the polls that show that American people are fed up. We're also not going to pay attention to the fact that he can't win this war, but we have no solution either. I mean, they're so pathetic. Let me show you an example of this.
The saddest part about all of this, in addition to Russian media praising Donald Trump, which, my God, I can't believe that we can't even agree that that is horrible, is how emotional and petty and angry and aggressive Donald Trump was. I mean, I literally think about, I work for a lot of women candidates. Folks say that we shouldn't have women in leadership positions because they'll be too emotional in making decisions. Well, Donald Trump and JD Vance, they were a little too emotional in these decisions and these conversations and getting us further away from a ceasefire.
Okay, let me just correct the record here. President Trump and the United States of America, in conjunction with Ukraine, we have been closer to a ceasefire than the Biden administration ever was. So for her to make the claim that President Trump is messing it up, he's taking us away from a ceasefire. Lady, there was never even going to be a ceasefire if Kamala Harris was elected president, okay? Let's just be honest here. And secondly, they're too emotional. No, what I find to be too emotional is your reaction and the Democratic Party's reaction, where they spend their days, their waking hours, screaming and crying about Elon Musk and President Trump and thinking they know how to end this war, when really they don't even talk about ending war. They don't even talk about a peace agreement. They have offered no solution whatsoever, no plan, no strategy. All they have offered is the idea that they would love to keep funding this war, all in the name that Putin is a dictator and he's the #1 threat to America.
Look, I think Trump ran on ending the war. He said day one. We're not at day one right now, but he wants to end the war as soon as possible. He has managed to engage Putin in some kind of conversation. He thought he was engaging Zelensky. And then Zelensky goes out today and says, oh, we're very, very far away from ending the war. The exact wrong thing to do. I don't know who he's getting his political advice from, but he needs to stop listening. It sounds like maybe Chris Murphy and other Senate Democrats. If you want to understand how to deal with Donald Trump, those are the wrong clowns to consult with. Maybe for balloon animals at a child's birthday party, but not for geopolitical advice.
And that is spot on. Hopefully Zelensky is not listening to people like Congressman Chris Murphy there. Now let's go to our other breaking story here, and that is the FBI agent who's in charge of the New York field office has resigned. He sent a letter to his employees telling them that this Friday he will retire from the FBI. And of course, everybody is speculating on why. Now, before we get there and what I think about it, I want you to take a listen to MSDNC because they sound demoralized over this and they might be scared, which I think me and you both know why.
Really significant breaking news to tell you about on the FBI front. The head of the New York field office, James Dennehy, has retired under intense pressure. He had tangled with the Trump administration over their demand that the names of all FBI agents who worked on or touched any January 6 cases be handed over. In a letter to staff earlier this month that we covered on this program, Dennehy had written this, quote, "Today we find ourselves in the middle of a battle of our own, as good people are being walked out of the FBI and others are being targeted because they did their jobs in accordance with the law and FBI policy." He added this, quote, "Time for me to dig in," end quote. That list of names was eventually handed over. Two sources tell NBC News that Dennehy was given a choice to retire or be fired, and he chose to retire earlier today.
Now, one of two things are probably true with this situation. Someone has to take the fall for what happened recently. Pam Bondi has been embarrassed. There's no question. A terrible start to her position as Attorney General. She hyped up the Epstein files and totally blew it. We all can admit that at this point. So is somebody being held accountable for that? Maybe. Or maybe this was already going to happen because he's one of those FBI agents from a leadership standpoint that needed to go. Maybe they couldn't do it a month ago. So at the end of the day, we don't actually know why he's putting in his papers, but he needs to go because we know he's a never Trumper. There's no question about that. Now, let's hear the other side of this. Tim Burchett, who comments on the Epstein files.
Real transparency. What do you
I'll go out on a limb here and say that thing was botched. She should have never opened her dadgum mouth and said, I'm sitting here with bragging, this thing's on my desk. And all she had allegedly was some very limited records. I think the thing was botched. I think somebody's in over their head. Yeah, somebody's going to lose their job. Dadgum, they should. But I don't think it'll get as high as it needs to. And that's why nobody trusts these things. Nobody trusts this swamp that is actually a sewer. And that's Washington, D.C., because of crap like this.
And I agree with him. It was a hype job that failed miserably. There's no question about that. And a lot of people, especially on the right, we don't want to hear from her anymore. We just want to see action. Prove through results that you have some level of credibility, because right now she has none. You can't hype up a case like Epstein, claim you have all these files, and it's new information, and you end up handing it in binders to social media influencers, and none of it is new information. Now, she has some more news about what happened. She went on to Hannity tonight and had this to say.
But, you know, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m. Thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Cash is going to, Director Patel, is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay, I want to be clear because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York.
Yep.
So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, we're going to go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein, because there are a lot of victims.
Listen, I told you guys I wouldn't talk about it unless there was a big update, and that is a big update. And the guy in charge of that FBI field office is going to retire, so I guess that's great news. But my only thing to the Attorney General, Department of Justice, and FBI, I don't want to hear you guys anymore. I don't want to see you come on to Hannity or Fox News anymore. Just do your job. Prove the results that we can trust you. Because even I don't buy what she just said right now. They're going to have to truly prove. Hand over those documents to Congresswoman Anna Paulina. She's in charge. She has a full task force for exposing all of this information with JFK, MLK, RFK, and Epstein. Do that, right? I mean, again, that's how I see it. You guys may disagree, but I have zero patience for this stuff. All right, so let's move to the question of this video today. Clearly, President Trump pausing military aid to Ukraine. Do you believe that is a smart move, or do you believe that is the wrong move? Let me know what your thoughts are about that in the comment section below. Now, the wrong move actually came earlier when the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, I guess, took it upon himself to respond to this new scandal that is happening with the Democratic Party. They have been caught paying protesters to rage against Elon Musk, President Trump, and Doge. And if you missed out on those details and more of the story, you could click on that video because it's coming up right now.